Hey, we are live. How about we let Larry kick us off, CJ? What do you think about that?
Sounds good. Let's roll.
All Things Unexplained. Hosted by Dr. Mounts,
Let's face it, we were always ready to roll without him anyway.
CJ Derringer,
Ain't nobody perfect, right?
and Smitty Neves.
I've never planned out hardly anything my whole life. I just freeball.
Green, Cajun Man.
I'm just old nobody, somebody looking for somebody.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to All Things Unexplained. I am CJ Derringer here along with my co-host, Dr. Tim Mounts. We're missing Smitty tonight. Hey,
Are we
Smitty.
really?
Well, yeah, we are.
Hey,
We're
Smitty.
missing him physically. He's not here.
That's-
But no, we do send our best to you. Hope you're doing well. We have a very exciting show on All Things Unexplained tonight. We are excited to welcome yet another guest. I love these nights and these days and these mornings, and whenever we're recording that we have guests, I just find it so fascinating to get other people on here and hear a little bit about them and their worlds and what they can share that's unexplained with us, or any digging that they've done to answer the unexplained. So tonight we are lucky enough to have an author with us. She's written some young reader books, some nonfiction books, some fiction books. She's a freelance writer and photographer. She's an expert in self-publishing. She has a plethora of experience with horses. I think the list goes on and on, but I'll let her share a little bit about herself. Please welcome to our show, Donna Campbell Smith. Hello, Donna.
Hello to you.
Hi, Donna.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey. Oh, I'm so excited.
So we are so lucky to have you. You reside right here in North Carolina with us. Tim and I are in North Carolina as well. Smitty's out there in Mississippi, but again, he's not here tonight, so this is a North Carolina exclusive interview. It's always fun to get somebody local. So thanks for joining us. So Donna, I was reading a little bit about your background, and it sounds like you started working with horses. Is that correct? That came before all of the writing?
Yes, it did. In Martin County, in the Martin Community College, they started the equine technology program, and I was in that first class. That first year I started.
What does equine technology mean?
Well, it's basically just all things about horses. We had two programs. One was breeding farm management and training farm management, and I opted for breeding farm management. But I was already in the business with boarding and giving lessons and stuff. Probably if I'd known what I was getting into, I might have been chickened out of the whole thing. It was pretty, but it was pretty amazing program.
Wonderful. Did you grow up with horses?
No. I dreamed of having one from the time I was a little girl. So I had, where most people have imaginary playmates, I had an imaginary horse. His name was Leafy because he ate leaves, which horses shouldn't eat leaves. And I galloped him all over the neighborhood.
Oh my goodness, I love that. Why do kids do that? They just add E to the end of everything, right? Like my daughter right now, she has a fake puppy that she calls Treaty because it eats treats. Like that's the logic of a child, right?
Yeah, I guess it must be.
That is so fun. We have like a fan of yours chiming in here. Jackie is looking forward to hearing.
I
from
see
Donna.
Jackie's picture. Hey, Jackie.
Thanks for tuning in, Jackie.
She's
Love
there.
that. Wonderful.
So, Donna, when did you first realize you wanted to be a writer?
Oh, I think I was maybe about 12 years old. And I always, in school, I was like one of the weird people who looked forward to term papers and research papers and, anything that you write. I liked it. I always did. And I love to read. We didn't have TV and stuff when I was a kid, so I would hear a lot. I think about it now with my great-grandchildren children in their devices and gaming and everything, Mother would always like telling me, get your nose out of that book, you haven't done your chores and stuff like that. So I think it's just a different form but same problem, or not a problem, but not to us it wasn't.
I know, now we're telling them, go put your nose in a book, okay, and keep it there for a while.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was one of the ones under the covers with the flashlight, or climb a tree with a book, or whatever. I was always reading.
That was me too. I set up a little Minnie Mouse tent in my bedroom as a kid, and I would go in my tent with a flashlight and read for hours. I loved to read. I still love to read. I loved reading your book. It was phenomenal. It was really fun.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
We'll dive into that in a little bit. But and so writing, Tim, you've done lots of writing as well. When did you know, Tim, that you wanted to be a writer?
Well, I think, my son is 7, and so it's brought back a lot of deja vu for me. I think probably around the time I was 7 years old, because he does a lot of writing. So he writes all these little short stories, comic books he calls them, and graphic novels. And I admit I probably have influenced that to a large degree, perhaps. But growing up, I just consumed everything I could get my hands on. It's like Donna said, we had a TV, but Mama mostly had access to it. It's not like I wanted to watch Dynasty, or Dallas. So it was read the Encyclopedia Britannica, or read the dictionary, or read the comic books. So I discovered comic books at some point. And I think that, and actually something about Donna that really caught my eye when I was reading about you, Donna, was how you used to listen to late night, or maybe it was your mother or grandmother used to listen to late night radio. Yeah. That's right. And so I had a lot of that as a kid too. Like, I still remember, getting the radio and just slowly turning the dial and fixing the antenna and trying to find ways to boost my antenna, and just being so excited when I could find somebody talking from another part of the country. I just thought it was so exciting. And of course, it was mostly AM at night, in the middle of the night for me. And all those things just really wanted me to express myself in a creative way. I don't think there was much other way to do that back in the day, except through writing. I wasn't necessarily an artist in terms of graphic artist or anything like that, but I just felt like writing was the natural way for it to come out, because I love to read so much.
Yeah, me too. I love to read, love to write. You said Encyclopedia Britannica. That totally took me back to when my parents got our first set, and I'll never forget it. Just up there, it was so beautiful, right? We had every set of them, and just these hardbound, beautiful encyclopedias that if we wanted to know something, that's where we went. We would take an encyclopedia off the shelf and research it. Now, gosh, we have so much information at our fingertips. It's scary.
Yeah.
A waste of time, most of it, really. But
here's a question: do they still sell encyclopedias?
Oh, I'm sure. They're probably more expensive now, right?
Maybe in used bookstores.
Yeah. Well, there used to be encyclopedia salesmen. That would go door to door.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I bought when my kids were coming up, I bought World Book from the door-to-door salesman. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think it was quite lucrative too, because everybody needed them. It was like the internet, it was your search engine.
Yeah. Right.
Which actually reminds me of a question I saw the other day, and it was a would you rather question. I'll ask both of y'all this. Would you rather never to be able to use search engines again, like Google, or never use smartphone apps again? I had to think about that.
I don't use smartphone apps anyway, so
that's an easy one for you.
Yeah, it was easy.
Yeah.
Goodbye to
learning.
the apps. I'm afraid I've just got too many apps.
The apps that I use don't bring me any knowledge. So I'd rather have access to knowledge. So I'm going to say I'd get rid of the apps and I would keep the Google search engine.
Yeah, me too.
I like it.
I mean, I think the
concur.
only app I have on my phone that I would search for information is Google. So,
There you go.
And Donna, Dana Everett Bauer
Hey,
said break a
Dana.
leg.
Yeah, if any of our
you
listeners
shouldn't say
out there
that to an
have any
old lady,
questions,
Dana.
Hey, at least you didn't say
it
break a
reminds
hip.
me of it
True.
reminds me of the character in your book who broke her ankle.
Yep.
But yeah, if any of our listeners have any questions for Donna or for either of us, please go ahead and send those our way, and we'll try to address them on the show. That's always something fun for us to do, get some listener involvement. And Donna, before we dive into this new book that you have here, why don't you tell us a little bit about where people can find more information on you, your website and your social media pages? Where can they go to find Donna?
You can just Google Donna Campbell Smith and find me. I don't think there's
really?
another one out there. So my
One of a
website,
kind.
DonnaCampbellSmithWrites.com. And I'm on Facebook, and I have a book page and an art page and my general page on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, and I hardly ever look at my Twitter account, so I might not
It's
see
those things
somebody
that you
goes
have
there
to
to
have,
find me.
right? You have to have those.
You have to
You
have
have to
time
have those
to
in
write
order
and
to
do
have
stuff.
a business.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Donna, on your website, I was on it earlier, that picture of you at a lake, is that a lake here in North Carolina?
That is Falls Lake at Beaver Dam State Park at the end of their
Oh.
little fishing pier, and Jackie took
Yeah.
that picture of me.
I love that picture. It's great.
I like that picture of me.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And then, of course, there's your business card. I have to share this business card with everybody because I've
Oh, it's
never
terrific.
seen anything as wonderful. And I would love, like Tim said earlier, I would love to get one for myself. I'm going to see. Tell me if you could look at this. This is fantastic.
That is so awesome.
I love this so much. Is this something that
Oh,
you did or a friend
that's,
did for you? Or
yeah, I drew it. It's a self-portrait. That is me
Oh.
at the beach with the wind in my hair. My
Oh,
favorite
this is
thing to do.
fantastic. This is so great. Oh, when I saw this, I said, I'm going to love this woman. I just knew it. Oh, it's so good. Okay, so I have to learn to draw myself, is what you're saying.
There you go. Yeah, just do it.
Or let
Too
Donna draw
fun.
you.
Yeah. I'll go to the beach and let the wind take over my
There
hair.
you go.
Okay, well, the reason that we have Donna on this today is we found you in a news article about a new book that you wrote. And I've got the book here with me. It's called My Neighbors from the Woods.
Hold it over,
And
CJ.
it is about, oh, okay, thank you. Yep, my camera is off. There we go. My Neighbors from the Woods. There you are. Who did the artwork for this one?
I did that.
You did this as well. Donna,
I
what
love
can't
it.
you do? Oh my gosh.
I can't sing. I
Okay.
can't sing. I can't play an instrument. I have no musical ability whatsoever. It's all visual stuff.
That is wonderful. So we on this show at All Things Unexplained, we have interviewed a lot of Bigfoot experts, Bigfoot authors, and when I started reading the book, I didn't realize it was fiction. We've read so many nonfiction Bigfoot stories, so I'm reading it and going, oh my gosh, this is great. Like this is just really, it reads so much like fiction. And Tim goes, yeah, CJ, it's fiction. I'm like, oh, that makes more sense. But every little nuance in this story that you wrote about, Bigfoot experts that we have talked to have shared something similar in terms of people's experiences. So you must have done a lot of research before you wrote this book. Tell me a little bit about that process.
Well, I wrote this during pandemic shutdown. Yes, I had time to do it. But I have been interested in reading since I got a web TV. Do you know what that is?
No.
Before
Is
I
that
had
like
a
a
computer,
smart
it was a gizmo you could hook up to your TV and access the internet. I don't know how it worked, but that was my first introduction to the internet. And a story that stuck with me, though, was about a woman who had this relationship with this Bigfoot family. And I tried to go back and find it, and then I saw there were several similar stories out there on the internet. But so that was just one story that kind of stuck with me, though, because I don't know, it seems like most of the people in the Bigfoot world that you hear about, the experts and whatnot, are men. There seem to be a whole lot of women out there, not a lot. So I don't know. It just captured my imagination to think that could happen. I'm from northeast North Carolina, which is bear country, and I love going to the refuges, and you can just drive through and see multiple bears most anytime you go to Alligator River Refuge or Pungo.
Yeah.
And also kind of inspiration in the back of my mind for my story was there was a lady that lived in Terrell County named Kay Grayson. They called her the Bear Lady, and she had 1,000 acres of land out there she had inherited from somebody, and she lived out there with no plumbing, no electricity, in a trailer, and she had this amazing relationship with the bears. And I have a 4-hour video that I bought from her of her with those bears. So it kind of seemed like a possibility to me that somebody could have that kind of relationship with Bigfoot. So that's what got me started. But yeah, I started watching a lot of the YouTube Bigfoot channels while I was on shutdown here alone in the woods. And reading websites and stories. I like the stories. So and there's some really amazing storytellers out there too.
Well, I would say you're one of them.
That was my research, watching YouTube.
Yes. Well, it's a fantastic read. I highly recommend everybody pick it up and read it. And I instantly got sucked into your main character. We call her Maggie, right?
Right.
Her name isn't mentioned too much in the story, a couple of times, but so I was just really sucked into this lady. She lives by herself out in the woods and loves her coffee, gets up and makes her coffee every morning, and has her cat, and goes out and takes care of the chickens and makes sure the chickens are back in at night. And this recurs a lot in the story, and it just really made me think about how many people actually live this way. There are so many people that are living in North Carolina especially, and they have their chickens and they drink their coffee, and their lives are just sort of a simple everyday, this is what I do. And for her to go out to dinner or to go to a barbecue or grill out or what have you, it was a big thing. Like, oh, okay, I've got to make sure that I wash up, and what am I going to wear? I don't do these things very often. And do you find yourself relating to her and her?
Well, when you write, you always have a piece of yourself in there. So I do live in the woods, basically. I rent a house on a 200-acre farm that another farmer rents the pasture land and raises cattle. So I get to sit here in my office and watch the cows and the wildlife and stuff. So relate. Okay. But it's more. It's also more than just about her relationship with Bigfoot. It's like her independence and her other relationships with people. Yeah. Yes,
it was, and I really got sucked in. And I'm not going to give away how it ends, but I was like, oh, I like that. I like the way that it went.
But she did.
So I want people to read it.
She did have a relationship, another relationship in the book too, right, with a friend named John.
Yes,
right.
A friend named John, and then she's got a female friend and her husband as well that check in on her every once in a while. Oh, are you doing okay? It's sort of this like, oh, because she felt like, oh, because I'm a woman who lives alone, everybody feels like they have to check in on me and ask if I'm okay all the time. And she gets to a point where she's like, yeah, I'm okay. I've got this. I can handle it. Please let me be. Like, stop. Like, just because I'm a woman out here by myself doesn't mean that I can't do this. I've done it for 30 years, sort of thing. It was great.
Yes.
But it has to make you wonder, though, CJ, and to me, maybe Donna can tell us more about this. Do you think that Maggie's, the fact that she did live out in the woods alone as a female, and she only had just a few other relationships, Do did that lead to the interaction with the Bigfoots? She was out there by herself, just kind of one with nature. And actually, Donnie, who it made me think of was that there's only one human that's ever been known to have been accepted into chimpanzee society, and that was Jane Goodall, out alone as a female, and that's who it made me think of. It like in your Donna, but what do you in your mind? How did you see that?
That didn't really occur to me, because I think of Jane Goodall as a scientist and an educated person, which makes it different maybe from Maggie. Maggie wasn't trying to really do research on them, I guess is what I'm thinking. But I just hadn't even thought of that. But that's kind of a cool thought. Yeah.
In Maggie's case, it's like they came to her and she was terrified of them, right? As I think most people would be, not knowing what this creature is capable of, or the noises and the smells and all of the things that you talk about in the book could be terrifying. And the Bigfoot do some damage to her property, right? And she goes to this other strong female character in your book, Phoebe, I believe was her name. Do I have that correct? Phoebe, yes. And so Phoebe lives on her own, very strong female character, and she tells Maggie what she needs to do in order to make the chaos stop, because Maggie does not want to believe that this is a Bigfoot. She does not want to say the words out loud and be sent to the loony bin that she's got this Bigfoot, on her property. But Phoebe all along is going, that's not a bear. That's not a bear doing that. That's not a bear walking on 2 feet across your path. That's the big man. That's the Bigfoot. So,
and I think that humans just getting more in touch with nature, I mean, it can lead to all kinds of discoveries. And so I think it's so plausible the book is, and the interactions. And did either of you see was very recent bipedal great ape news concerning an orangutan in Borneo? Did either of you see this?
Yes,
so,
I did see it.
So a very famous picture was taken recently. I'm going to try to put it on the screen, and hopefully both of you can see this. This was an amateur, I'll set the stage, an amateur photographer was crossing thank you, Dana. I hate to interrupt it. Thank you, Dana Everett Bauer. Dana Everett Bauer says, I love the Jane Goodall comparison, Dr. Mills. Thank you. So, very recently, an amateur photographer in Borneo was crossing a snake-infested swamp, right? And it looked like he was just up to his shoulders in lots of danger. And out of nowhere, this happens. I'm going to put the picture on the screen here.
I have not seen this. This is not
I did see that. I did see that. Yes.
And it is exactly what it looks like. The orangutan extended his hand to help the photographer out of the swamp. It appeared to be legitimately concerned. As far as I know, this was kind of a first, among
incredible
bipedal great apes. And I know, isn't it amazing? Now,
that's really interesting.
I'd like to ask both of you, because this reminded me of the story too. They asked the photographer,
yes,
did you let the orangutan help you out of the swamp? What do y'all think the photographer decided to do?
Oh,
I would have.
I would have too, I think.
Yeah, y'all are so kind-natured. So the photographer actually did not let the orangutan help him out of the water. He had 2 reasons. One, he was concerned for his physical safety. Oh, hey, Connor Flynn, friend of the show, Connor Flynn, just said, hey, y'all. Connor, let us know if you've seen this story about the orangutan helping or trying to help the photographer out of the swamp. So he was, one, concerned for his safety because orangutans are immensely powerful, and I believe this was a female orangutan. And 2, the photographer said that they were only there to observe. They were not there to interact with nature at all. And it reminded me of part of your book, Donna, my neighbors from the woods, where, you know, they took something of hers. They took some chickens, but they left her some gifts in their place.
And that's a reoccurring theme that when you start reading Bigfoot stories, you see that. But you know, crows do that. So it's not
really
far-fetched to me. Crows will bring you gifts. Crows have facial recognition. So if you're like feeding or whatever, they know who it is feeding them. And there's stories of them just leaving little shiny things that they'd like to pick up.
I know, it makes you think twice about putting a scarecrow up, right? Listener Deborah Brown said they would have let the orangutan help them out.
So,
but I understand what he's saying about not interfering. When I first moved onto the farm, I had horses, so I had a salt block, and I put it in the edge of the woods in camera. You know, I was baiting deer is what I was doing, which was really wrong. And but then they opened the farm to a hunting club, so I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I've taught them not to be afraid to come close to the house and stuff. So
and that was a theme in your book too.
Yeah,
that was sort of a challenge for her in your book. Was, okay, do I leave these offerings and make the Bigfoot feel safe with humans? And that was a challenge that she ran into with her friend John as well, in terms of how should she handle that. So coming full circle to the orangutan, this photographer is only there to observe. Does he want to reach out his hand and make these orangutan feel like they can trust humans, when really we all know there's a lot of very bad humans out there? And maybe they shouldn't be so trusting. That's a tough one, but I still think I would have taken. I mean, that is such a magical moment. I think I would have taken her hand.
Let me put that back up there for everybody that missed that. I'd like to say hey to my childhood friend Scott Bailey. Thanks for tuning in to the show. We're talking to, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to award-winning author of My Neighbors from the Woods, about a lady named Maggie who discovers herself with some Bigfoot neighbors.
So, Donna, there was something you wrote about in your book. This is so fun to talk to an author of a fiction story, because every time I read a book, I'm like, oh, I wonder what they were thinking, or if that's what they meant. So one part of your book, she goes walking with John into the woods, and they are going to go fishing, or maybe they're just walking, and they go fishing later.
Down to the pond.
He finds an arrowhead. And he says, oh, do you find these here often? And she says, oh, you know, when the rains come through and wash them up. Are we thinking that the Bigfoot are leaving those as gifts, that they're finding them and leaving them as gifts? Or is that just more something that, okay, we find arrowheads in this area?
I think that was just part of the scene for the two of them.
Okay.
No, I didn't intend it that way for a Bigfoot to have left it there.
Okay, gotcha. See, that's how I interpreted it. So you get the reader-author thing going on. But that's what's so great about reading and writing.
They left the hickory nuts for.
Yes. Oh, so fun. It's, like I said, it's so fun to talk to somebody that wrote a book after I've read the book. It's great. So you've now done Bigfoot, and I really do recommend. I'm going to show everybody the book one more time. This artwork that you did here yourself is fantastic. I recommend everybody go and grab it. It truly was a very fun read.
Let's make it a bestseller.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So, Donna, do you enjoy eating Snickers bars as much as your
Well, I don't eat sweets now, but I've had characters in other books have that one thing, kind of signature thing. So when I do a book signing, I'll have a bowl of mini Snickers for people to take when they come get their book signed.
That's fun.
Speaking of that, we have a listener question for you, Donna. Listener Dana Everett Bauer says, so are we going to have a sequel to My Friends?
No, we're not going to have a sequel to that, but I am working on another Bigfoot book that I hope to have done before May, so I can take that to the Bigfoot Festival in Marion.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm working on it.
Can you give us any insight on that one?
Yeah.
This is going to be a human Bigfoot relationship, but she's telling it after she's an adult, so it's not a children's book per se, but it's about children.
Okay, gotcha. Now you do write some young reader books.
I don't even know where it's going yet. That's my writing process. I just start writing without not a whole lot of forethought, and characters just kind of do their thing. I did two cozy mysteries, and you can't do that with a cozy mystery. You have to have a plan. So the first one I wrote, I had to start over. But all my other fiction books, I just write and see where it goes.
That's interesting.
Now, what's a cozy mystery?
That's one without the blood and gore and stuff. It's just like Murder, She Wrote. That sort of, yeah.
Oh, I loved Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah, me too. I watched the reruns on Antenna TV.
Angela Lansbury is one of my all-time favorite people.
Yes, I like her.
I just have to say so. And I believe the name of her town was Cabot Cove. Is that right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. I need a Murder, She Wrote on trivia night sometime next time I go to my local establishment that has trivia night. So, Donna, I have to propose a theory of mine about Murder, She Wrote. I always thought that Angela Lansbury should be the suspect in some of those crimes, because think about it, anytime she went to visit somebody, anytime she went to another town, there was always a murder.
Yes.
She was the one common thread between all the murders.
Agatha Christie did that with Hercule Poirot, I can't pronounce his name, that series she did. I think in one of them he was a suspect, and you really thought he did it until the end.
Oh yeah, Sergeant.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I believe he was French. Perot. Mm-hmm. Deborah Brown says, "Me too. I think she's agreeing with me that Angela Lansbury should have been a suspect in at least some of those crimes."
Somebody got murdered everywhere she went.
Super creepy, right? Even though I love her, I love Angela Lansbury, but super creepy. Better be on her good side.
You don't want her to come to your house.
No, that's like every time I used to live on the coast here in North Carolina, and you did not want Jim Cantore to show up right before a hurricane, because then you knew your town was the target of that next hurricane. And he showed up in Wilmington for the last one. It was like, no.
Well, I always imagined if Angela Lansbury ever got arrested or threatened with arrest, she would just have Matlock as her defense attorney. So it was pretty much pointless in ever even attempting to charge her with anything.
Tim, I feel like this is the next book idea for you. You should take this and run with it.
Yeah.
Murder, She Wrote, and Committed.
Perfect.
True confessions.
Yeah.
I like
now,
it.
Donna, you had, before we started the show, you mentioned that one of your daughters had purchased you a Bigfoot mask. Here we are in the time of COVID, so masks are very prevalent and popular. Have you always been a huge Bigfoot fan and interested in Bigfoot, or is that sort of a recent development?
I've always believed that there was a critter out there, a Bigfoot-like critter, and that came from my daddy. Like we said, he listened to late night shows on the radio, and he would tell us stuff he had heard, about Bigfoot on there. And I think he read the men's True and a couple of the men's magazines, and there'd be stories in those. But I wrote about this in one of my articles. He talked about a wild man that lived back. He was from upstate New York, is where he grew up and lived all his life till he went in the army. This wild man, and he would have nightmares about wrestling this wild man. And one night he was just moaning and groaning and tossing and turning, and Mama reached over, grabbed him by the shoulder to wake him up, and when he did, he put her in a hammerlock because he was wrestling that wild man. So she said, "You go ahead and have your nightmares from now on. I'm not waking you up." But so when I was doing some research, it came and the Small Town Monsters on YouTube channel, they go back and talk about some of these old stories about wild men and Bigfoot and the hairy man or whatever in different parts of the country, and they had talked about upstate New York. So I was just Googling around and came across this story, a newspaper clipping that was from the 1930s. I can't remember the year, but it was about several sightings of this, what they called a hairy wild man. So I'm wondering, Daddy would have been a young teenager at that time, that maybe he read, or, people were talking about those stories, and maybe that's where his thing about the wild man came from. And I didn't ask questions. There's, you got questions, ask them before your parents are gone, because I didn't know anything about Daddy's side of the family lineage or anything. And you were taught when I was a child to be seen and not heard, so you didn't break in adult conversations and ask questions. So I didn't, and now I wished I had.
I wish I could teach some of that to my girls. To my children. My children are always talking all the time. No, that's good advice though. If you have questions, ask them now, right? That's tough once they're gone. You can't get that time back, huh?
Not gonna know.
And Donna, listener Deborah Brown wonders, maybe your dad actually saw the wild man.
I don't know. He didn't ever say that he did. I think he would have told us if he had. By the way, Deborah's my daughter. She's my youngest daughter.
Oh. That's wonderful.
She knows who I'm talking about. But no, I have a feeling that him being a teenager at that time, and imagination and curiosity running away with you, that made an impact on him.
Absolutely. Well, you did such a nice job. I felt we again, I said we've had lots of Bigfoot experts on the show who they all talk to us about Bigfoot in terms of being actually very peaceful beings unless they are threatened in some way, and that they don't show themselves unless they trust that they are in a safe space, and the idea of these offerings, and they send things back, and the smells and the sounds of Bigfoot, they just apparently have a very, very distinct, awful smell to them.
Yeah,
and
I did an article with top 10 ways to know if you have a Bigfoot. So I went through each of those things, and
I saw that article.
But the ones that make the impact to me are the people who have seen them. There can't be that many people have seen something and there not be any truth to it. So, right. and a lot of these attributes, like the peacefulness or whatever, I can relate that to bears, because this woman that I was telling you about, Kay Grayson, I mean, she fed them. She went to restaurants. She lived, she'd go to Manio to get supplies. Somebody would take her. She didn't drive. Go to the barbecue joints and get the scraps and stuff, and go to the those places where they sell the day-old bread. So she fed them, so they, and they're opportunists like all wildlife. Are going to take the easiest route to food. So I would think a Bigfoot wouldn't be any different. Are you still there?
Yep, you're back.
Here, we froze for a second there. Yep. we got most of it there. We got most of that. So I thought you did such a nice job incorporating all of those traits of Bigfoot into this story and developing your characters. It was just very well written. It was a very fun read for me.
Thank you so much. That's music to an author's ears.
Good.
Oh, so this is a big compliment, Donna. So, a long-time listener of the show, George Winter, said, Hey guys, y'all just beat the Saints of Newark for viewers. I turned it off to see you.
Oh, wow. Thanks.
I believe that is the new, what's the Mafia show prequel? George, you had to, the Sopranos. I believe that's the Sopranos prequel. George must have HBO Max. Thought about checking it out, but I agree,
HBO Max
George.
ain't got nothing on us.
Donna is much more interesting than the Sopranos. I could tell you that.
Certainly. Oh, so fun.
So, Donna, I wanted to ask you, do you have any advice for aspiring authors?
Yes, I do. Just do it. That was the advice given to me. I was standing in a pasture, talking with a friend, and had just separated and getting divorced from my husband. And I said to her, I said, when this is all over with, I'm going to write a book. And she says, just do it now. And that's what you have to do. You just start writing. You don't worry about the mechanics or what you know how to do or not, because there's critique groups out there, there's editors, there's people to help you with that stuff, you know. Just write your story down. That's it.
I love it. That's great advice.
It is great advice.
What other authors are you fans of or have inspired you?
Well, my favorite books from childhood were two books by Zane Grey. Let's see if I can remember the titles. One was The Trail. Let's see. The Last Trail. I can't remember them. But they were about the Zanes, who were real life pioneers, I think, in the West Virginia area. And those two books just captured my imagination about living, you know, in the wilderness and surviving in the wilderness. And but now my favorite authors are, I like Southern women's fiction. I like Nancy Peacock. I like Diane Chamberlain, but two who we've had. I'm the team leader for the Writers Guild in our Franklin County Arts Council. We used to have retreats before COVID, and they both came and spoke. And North Carolina is very rich in best-selling authors. And let's see, who else do I like? Ann Siddons, she's from South Carolina, Low Country, so that's the setting for a lot of her books. I don't know. I like a lot of readers. We have a great group. We have several published authors in our Franklin County Arts Council's Writers Guild. And if I start naming them, I'm going to leave somebody out. Jackie's written several. She's a poet and a spoken word artist. She is also working on a novel right now. Kay Watley, that owns the Gray Area News, which is probably where you saw the article about my book. Yeah. She writes novels that involve time travel and just make you feel like, yeah, that can happen. They're really good. And who else? I know we got a bunch of, Kim Bale writes fantasy, I guess. It's there's fairies, there's ghosts, there's all kinds of strange creatures, and she writes, it makes you think it all just can really happen. And I've never been a big fantasy fan, and I don't think my book's fantasy, because I think Bigfoot is real. So, but I'm getting indoctrinated into enjoying some fantasy and sci-fi and stuff.
Oh yeah,
I've
Jackie
broadened my
Dove.
horizon.
Oh, I think that's the only way to be. Jackie said thanks for the shout out, Donna. Mm-hmm. And I tell you what, you mentioned time travel.
Google her name.
What's that about Jackie?
I said Google her name.
Oh, I will. I've been intrigued to see what she's written. And you know, Donna, you mentioned time travel, and that's such a tricky thing to write about because of the physics of it all, and just so many paradoxes and what the rules of it are, you know, it's a really intimidating subject to get into is time travel, because I've heard a lot of people, when they delve into that, they have to just get a whiteboard out, you know, and start, okay, here's the rules. This is what happens if you do this, and this is what happens if you interact with other people. It's
consequences.
Right, it's the Back to the Future effect, right? This is what happens if CJ goes back into time and meets herself. You know, this is what happened if CJ goes back into time and meets her dad, you know, or so there's just so many
or goes
tricky
back and
things.
Changes something, you know.
Right. So many tricky things. Does it create a new universe? Does it just change the one future, or does it create a new future with a new universe? So, I mean, it's just so many things. CJ, I was wondering, what some of your favorite authors?
Oh, goodness. Well, Dr. Seuss. I
He's
really
brilliant.
into children's books right now because he's brilliant. He really is brilliant. Everything that I read of his, and it's so fun to rediscover him now as an adult, because, you know, as a kid, you're like, oh, it rhymes. Oh, that's great. Oh, look at these fun pictures. But as an adult, he has some just phenomenal concepts and ideas, and just a learning experience every time. So that's really fun. And then also my background as an elementary education teacher, just the way that he brings phonics into his books and makes them fun. I really do love Dr. Seuss. And then, of course, Mo Willems is a little bit of a newer author for me. He's a children's author as well.
Go Mo.
He makes some... Go Mo, that's right. He makes just the best, most enjoyable kids' books, too. They're just too funny, and I love reading them and getting very animated as I read them to my children, and they sometimes get sick of that. My oldest keeps telling me, don't, Mom, it's so loud. I'm like, how dare they say I'm loud? That's not fair. They're the loudest ever. As an adult, I have read so many different authors that I've loved. I love reading books that make me think. I couldn't name the authors of some of these, but The Art of Racing in the Rain, I thought was a really phenomenal book. There's a book called 1,000 White Women, which was very intriguing, about some Native American tribes that were trying to assimilate and not lose their land, and that was a very interesting one. That one took sort of a true part of history and where it ended, and then wrote a fictionalized novel from there, which I thought was really cool. We've read Agatha Christie, which she is just fantastic. Harlan Coben's one of my favorite mystery sort of authors, murder mystery, which is shocking because I don't like anything scary, but I do like his books.
They're cozy.
What's that?
I said they're cozy mysteries. They actually are not.
They're not. They are
Harlan's are not cozy.
They are not.
Lillian Jackson Brown, who wrote the Cat Who books, I read a bunch of those. Those were entertaining.
Yes.
So I think you two are the perfect candidates, CJ and Donna. By the way, we're talking to award-winning author Donna Campbell Smith, Unexplained Ones. Go out, get My Neighbors from the Woods. It is incredible. CJ and I have both read it. You know, one reason I love it is because it's such a character study, and I truly mean this. It reminds me a lot, honestly, of some of Stephen King's writings, because, you know, you might think that it's a Bigfoot book.
Not that scary, is it?
No, not scary, but here's what I mean. It's not
scary.
but here's what I mean. You know, Stephen King will write a book, and you might think it's about this really out there idea, right? But it's actually about people, right? Like you learn about all these different characters and how they interact with each other, and what they're thinking, and what their story is, and what has framed them into the person that they are. And that's what a lot of his stories are really about. They're just about people. And I thought that My Neighbors from the Woods was a lot about that. We learned so much about Maggie, and it was such a, I thought, character study of this intriguing lady. But I think you two are the perfect candidates to answer this question. What book belongs on everyone's bookshelf? And I love it. Deborah Brown, said just like E.T. I might have to process that for a minute. E.T., by the way, was the first movie I ever saw in a movie theater.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was 7 years old, so I have to tell this real quick. If my friend Scott Bailey still listen, Scott and I both grew up in rural Pontotoc County, Mississippi. And when I was 7 years old, E.T., the extraterrestrial, came out, right? And there was one theater in the whole county, the Joy Theater. It was on the Pontotoc Square, right? And Molly and Daddy took me to see that, and I guess my little brother too, maybe. I can't remember if he was there or not. Who cares about him being there? And the line of people were wrapped around the town square to go see E.T. And you know what? Looking back on it, I can't believe they let me see that, because that was actually kind of a scary movie for kids. But anyway, Donna, what book do you think belongs on everybody's bookshelf?
Oh my goodness, I don't know, because everybody's so different. I probably would say the Bible.
That's what I was gonna say.
There's some good stories in there too, and some scary ones. I don't know. I can't answer your question, Tim.
That's okay. I would have to say, if not a Stephen King book, then the Bible. That might seem contradictory, but you can't have good. That's the thing. You can't have good without evil. So, but the Bible has so many terrific stories in it, whether you take them as literal or not. They're just timeless stories that actually span, all across the whole world, across all kinds of different people and times and groups. So I can't disagree with the Bible. I used
to read stories to my granddaughter. The one she wanted me to read her over and over was where David chopped the head off of the giant.
Well, what's your favorite book of the Bible then, Donna? Is it David?
Mine? I think it's Psalms, just because it's the poetry. And I like to read them out loud and just enjoy the meter and the rhythm, and it's probably Psalms.
Oh yeah, and of course Psalms, I believe, stands for songs, right? And this may tell you something about me, right? It's a beautiful book, but this may tell you something about me. My favorite book of the Bible is Revelations. So there's just something about Armageddon,
mystery,
right? The apocalypse, avenging angels, plagues.
Okay. Something for everybody.
That's right.
Oh my!
And like Bigfoot, so many theories about what it is and what it means.
Oh yeah, well people think that Bigfoot is mentioned in the Bible, even it even goes back.
Well, there was the giants, yeah,
biblical times.
Donna, your story about reading the head getting cut off reminds me of I grew up in California, and I spent a lot of time in Santa Barbara, California, and I used to babysit often when I was in college. And I worked for a children's fitness center, and my boss had me watch her kids one day, and she had four kids under the age of 4. And her husband were like, just survive. Just survive, we'll be back. If everybody's alive at the end, you did your job. But she did say, okay, here's the routine, bath, brush their teeth. They get 2 books, and then they go to bed. So we did the whole routine. Everything's going great. And I go to put the kids to bed. I say, okay, what do you guys want to read? And their oldest daughter, who was maybe 5 at the time, because we want to read this book. And she pulls out this young kids Bible. Very, very shortened version of the Bible. Very short stories. She goes, we're on this chapter. And it's the chapter about the devil. I'm like, oh, okay. Not thinking anything of it. So I read them the chapter on the devil, thinking that they've clearly read this before. The girl she knows what she wants. So, they go to bed or whatever, and the parents get home and I leave. And the next day, my boss goes, what did you read to them? I just read that little children's Bible that you guys had there. They asked me to read chapter 5. Yeah, they asked you to read chapter 5 because we've refused to read them chapter 5. They were all terrified last night. Well, that was not in the instructions. They all survived, so I did my job.
There you go.
Every preacher knows, and if Smitty was here, he would tell you, every preacher knows that sometimes you have to break out the fire and brimstone. Like it's it's just necessary sometimes.
Oh boy. Yeah, they were fascinated with that one.
Donna, do you have any superstitions?
No, not really. I'm pretty much a realist, I guess. That's the thing with writing about Bigfoot. If I didn't believe he was real, I probably couldn't write about him.
Right, that makes sense.
Well, and your character's very much a realist too in the story. I got that from your character a lot. And she had so many yummy cookie recipes. Are these some cookie recipes that you yourself make?
Not me, but I have my my daddy's sister. They all lived up right on the state line between Pennsylvania and New York. Some of them lived in New York, some of them lived in Pennsylvania. Anyway, she made these most wonderful cookies. And the cookie jar was always full whenever we went to visit, and you could just get one anytime you wanted to. And they were soft, and they had nuts, and they had like the fruit, like you go to the fruit cake, and they were just in nutmeg. So I had a little reunion meeting with my cousins at the beach one time, and I was asking Joanne, I said, do you have, because my aunt had passed away by then, Aunt Myrtle's cookie recipe, you know, the ones that she made that were soft and had nutmeg. And she said, yes, let me go out to the car and get it. And she had a 3-ring binder with all of Aunt Myrtle's recipes. So I got the recipe for the cookies, and that recipe was Aunt Myrtle's grandmother's. So it would have been my great-great-grandmother's. Anyway, it was like 100-year-old recipe. And so I've made that once. I made the batch, and it makes like 3 dozen cookies. And because I was trying not to eat sweets, I was just giving cookies away to everybody. So I haven't made them again. That. Maybe I'll make them at Christmas time
You
this year.
need to make them, yeah. So it talks about like hickory nut cookies and all these cookies. So here's reading this book, and she always had cookies ready for whoever came over. Everybody always had some kind of cookie ready for people to dunk in their coffee.
Well, my mother was that way too. She always had some kind of goodies in the pantry, and when people would just drop by Mama's house unannounced any time of day, and she'd put on the coffee pot and bring out the goodies. And so there was always
yes. Well, I had a friend drop by today, and I had this like pang inside of me because I didn't have any cookies to offer. Here I had just read about all of these women that have these treats ready to go, and I was like, I've got some, I don't know, veggie straws in the pantry.
I didn't inherit it.
Oh,
CJ,
I need to find it.
Let me ask your opinion on something. So Maggie, we're in the book My Neighbors from the Woods, we're by award-winning author Donna Campbell Smith, who's with us tonight. CJ, Maggie, the main character in the book, she has this male friend that comes over and visits, right? And the town, and I don't want to give too much away, but the townspeople really think they should be an item. Do you think he, felt like he wanted to be an item with Maggie, or did he really just like the cookies?
Well, he did come over for coffee and cookies a lot. It was like, I'll see you in the morning for coffee.
But is that the key to a man's heart, or is through his stomach?
I was getting ready to say, that's what Mama said, the quickest way to a man's heart is through his stomach.
That's right. He
I don't know.
enjoyed the coffee.
And that, you know what else that made me think of? CJ and Donna, I have to tell you this. One of our favorite guests of the show is a female Bigfoot author, and I would say very much Bigfoot expert from Idaho. And she talks to a lot of people who have Bigfoot encounters. And one of her stories involves a man who has a female Bigfoot admirer. And he always knows when a date is going to go terrible if he brings her over, because the female Bigfoot gets upset, throws things at them, generally creates a chaotic temper tantrum of a scene, you know. So that is one thing I wondered in the book, where any of the Bigfoots potentially, you know, upset by John and her relationship with him, or her potential relationship with him. I just wondered that. There may not be an answer.
That occurred to me. No, I don't know. I mean, they would perceive him as a threat just because of him working for the forestry.
Right.
And knowing that they weren't particularly welcome in the forest, the Bigfoot by them. That ties into some of the conspiracy theories I've read and listened to about why. We have a similar thing in here in eastern North Carolina. I wrote an article about cougars. Ever since I've been a child, I've known that there were cougars in northeast North Carolina. And so I wrote that article, and I had over 100 people comment. It was an online website that they had sightings. But if you go to North Carolina Wildlife page, it unequivocally says that they're extinct in North Carolina. But they're not. So, you know, I understand that a little controversy. And I don't know what the reason is for not wanting people to know that they're there, but they are.
Yeah, that's a great point, Donna. By the way, listener Deborah Brown says, haha, all it takes to get a man is a cookie. Not sure how I feel
like
about...
we need to get your great grandma's cookie recipe and find some like single lady chat groups and be like, here you go.
Okay.
Take this.
I should have published Maggie's cookie recipe in the back of the book.
Yes, I'm feeling like we need it. We need to put that on our social media page. I want to make them. I need to make myself some hickory nut cookies. I have no idea where I would find hickory nuts, but
well, and Aunt Myrtle used to make the hickory nut cookies too, because she sent some to us for Christmas, and it's very tedious it's kind of like trying to crack out a walnut, because I have a little hickory tree in the backyard, and I haven't even tried to pick them out because it's not much nut for the shell that you have to go through to get to it. You got to beat it with a hammer or something to open it. So those were definitely cookies made with love.
Yeah, no, those were the things you made with whatever you had on hand, right? So hickory nut might have been the only thing they had around, so boom, you got a hickory nut cookie.
Well, that was her gift,
and you liked it.
Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So, you know, Don, I loved your example of the cougars, so I have to tell you that the same thing actually happens in Mississippi. My brother, he remains anonymous anytime he watches the show for some reason, but he's obsessed with the fact that black panthers or black cougars, some sort of large black cat, they are not listed as as a real animal in the state of Mississippi, but there are numerous people who have seen them and photographed them. And it's just like you said, Donna. Well, why is there no acknowledgement of it whatsoever?
No.
Cue the X-Files music.
But some of those sightings that I posted on my article were the black panthers. They call them black panthers, and some people think they're what's the genetic thing that makes an animal black that's not normally black? But the leopards that are in South America, is that leopards in South America? Because I've seen pictures where you faintly can see the spots, you know, but they're black.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
As far as North Carolina, I've actually heard theories on that, and one of my favorites actually revolved around a Bigfoot theory too, but it dates back to a train a really horrible train accident that occurred in the western part of the state. But I believe that Annie Oakley was on board, or rumored to be on board, and she was actually a part of the Wild West show.
Wild West show. Yeah.
Yes, and the train crashed, and it was apparently a horrible scene. I believe this was in the 50s, maybe before then. But all these animals, had all these exotic animals as part of the show, right? And the rumor is so many of them actually escaped in the train wreck, just into the woods and the wilderness, and what became of them, nobody knows.
Wow. That's incredible.
I guess that could happen. Well, and that's one of the things that the wildlife people will say to explain is that their pets escaped. No, that would make a lot of people having cougars for pets.
And a lot of them escaping.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
Right, and there actually is a real-life example of a sort of a scenario of this with Pablo Escobar in Colombia, and he liked to keep hippopotamuses on his drug estate.
What a strange pet.
I know, right? Well, and he had a lot of them, and at some point, his estate was raided, and Pablo was arrested, and all the hippopotami were just left to fend for themselves. And they actually, because of the climate in Colombia, they have proliferated, and now Colombia is a hotbed for hippopotamus. Go figure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they all go back to Pablo Escobar's drug estate. Like, they are all traced back to there, which is just an amazing example of how nature can run awry, right? Oh yeah, they supposedly kill more animals in Africa every year than anything else, or kill more people, I should say, than any other animal.
Wow.
So you never know.
Reason not to visit there.
So you never know what's out there.
You never know what's out there. Yes. Speaking of, you are listening to All Things Unexplained. We thank you, everybody who has joined in with us, and please do like us and follow us on our social media pages. Wherever you listen to your podcasts, you can follow us. You can find us at allthings-unexplained.com, or if you'd like to support us, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/unexplained. And we're here with award-winning author Donna Campbell Smith, talking about her new book that I have right here, My Neighbors from the Woods. Go out and get your copy today. And we've got George chiming in again about the white squirrels. And is it Brevard, North Carolina? Did I say that correctly?
I think it is Brevard.
What are the white squirrels?
Yeah.
Does anybody know?
We'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
I wager to say potentially tasty.
Oh, goodness.
That's what they are.
Oh, the Mississippi attitude right there, if I've ever heard one. No, look it up. White squirrels. Oh, look at it. Pops right up.
So, Donna, one thing I wondered...
Their own website.
Oh, they have their own website. They're famous. We should probably not hunt the white squirrels of Brevard. Donna, one thing I wondered about you hear something different from every different author, but do you believe in writer's block?
Oh, yeah. I think everybody has, some experts will say there's no such thing, but I think there's just spells where the muse is just not coming, and you just, I find that the easiest way to get through it is just what they call free write, where you just write. You don't think about what you're going to write, you just write. And usually I'm always surprised at what comes out of that when you don't think about it too hard. It's that way for me too with art. my better things, even that business card, is stuff that I just quickly do without thinking about it too much to see what comes out. But yeah, I think you get stuck.
Well,
Yeah.
like you said, you just got to get
Especially
started.
the way I do, which is probably not professional, or I always hated outlines in school and that kind of stuff anyway. Makes it seem like work instead of fun. But
Right.
so I just start writing, and there'll come a point where I don't know where I'm going to go next, and sometimes a change of scenery will help. Just
Oh, yeah.
write.
Well, what do you like to do when you're not writing, Donna?
I paint. I like photography. I like to go to the beach when I can, but I'm live further away from it than I used to. I lived in Plymouth most of my life,
Right.
Plymouth, North Carolina, which is only about 80 miles inland from Nags Head, Outer Banks. It's one of my favorite places to go. Just hang out with my friends. I belong to a writers group, and this summer I started doing a little container gardening in the backyard. Started out good until it got hot, and then I don't like to go out and water and mess with it when it's hot.
Yeah, that's the challenge, right? When it gets hot out, that's when my
I'm a
garden.
fair weather gardener. But
Me
Well,
too.
Deborah Brown says y'all like to go look for Bigfoots.
we go looking for bears, and if a Bigfoot were to show up, that would be awful fun. I think about some of the questionable signs of Bigfoot for me are the structures, the trees that are leaning against other trees, and if you drive through Terrell and Hyde County, mainland Dare County, you're going to see all kinds of configurations of trees laying on another tree, or and then sometimes it looks like something could have made it, but that's the wind, the rain, the snow. The wind can do amazing things. I took a picture. We have a bluegrass festival up here in Franklin County every year, and it's on like a 900-acre farm, and so one of the fun things is to ride around in golf carts, and there's little trails through the woods and stuff. And I took a picture of this tree that had fallen on another tree and split it right down the middle. Like that tree opened up.
Wow.
One. And that's pretty amazing. I was like, how in the world did that happen? But I don't think that Bigfoot did it.
Right.
But maybe he did. You never know.
You never know. It's kind of like if a tree falls in the woods, nobody's there to see it, right? And actually, Deborah says it is 100% chance that it was Bigfoot. So I was about to say, if a tree falls in the wood, nobody's there, does it make a sound? Well, if we're not there to see this happen, was it Bigfoot or not? Deborah Brown says it definitely was Bigfoot. I tell you, one of my questionable signs of Bigfoots, and I get so frustrated watching some of these Bigfoot shows when they do things like stick a marshmallow way up in a tree, or something, and then they come back a little bit later and they said, well, that was 8, 9, 10 foot up in the tree. The only thing that could have messed with that was a Bigfoot. And I'm thinking, look, if y'all would see the things these squirrels do in my yard, I'll bring the white squirrels up again.
Crows, birds.
Yeah.
Lots of things go up in the trees.
Oh,
well, one of my favorite YouTube channels is the Dixie Cryptid. And he had one of the experts on his show, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name, but he ended with saying not everything you see and hear in the woods is Bigfoot. So I thought that was pretty true. Pretty true. But you don't know, like you say. But
one thing that
I
is
just
common
like the ones, the eyewitness accounts. Those are the ones that impress me more than all the other little signs. But
oh yeah, for sure.
One thing that's true of the eyewitness accounts, and that is true in your book as well, is that you have to be out in the woods, right? I grew up in California.
Yes, and here's another thing that
People
makes
didn't
me
talk about
wonder,
Bigfoot where I
even
was.
about the eyewitness accounts, is if you announce you're going to have an expedition, you know, you put it all out there on the internet and everything, and where you're going and all that. I mean, I think there'd be somebody that would just have to, you know, dress up and go out there and try to scare somebody.
I should make that my new pastime. Just
Hey.
go out there and
Be careful doing that now. A lot of these
I know, you get
folks
shot.
carry guns with them. Too,
Well, there's
yeah.
all those ones out there that think they need to shoot one to prove they exist, so I would be afraid to do that, yeah. I guess so.
And you know, it reminds me of your character in the book, Donna. We're talking to Donna Campbell Smith, author of My Neighbors from the Woods. And the main character, Maggie, you know, she started seeing these huge footprints on her property. And she knew they weren't bear prints. It was, okay, like maybe the back feet, but never the front feet. And nobody believed her. You know, that was physical evidence. Her friend John, who loved her cookies, he didn't believe her. Her other friends didn't believe her. The townspeople just thought she could have gone, and maybe a dog, maybe a bat for protection. But you know, I couldn't help but wonder, like, was she frustrated? Like, how frustrated was she that nobody would even believe her at all?
Yeah, it's got to be. And so many people say, you know, that they wait till their old age before they even tell it because of the reaction they get. Well, and it's
Right.
just like the cougars again. You know, the wildlife people are saying, no, that's not what you saw. It's probably just a house cat.
I mean, the reality of
No
the
better.
situation is if I saw a Bigfoot tomorrow and I told everybody that I know that I saw a Bigfoot, the people that believe in Bigfoot would believe me, and the people that don't would not. They would all probably think I was
That is
crazy.
true.
I mean,
Yeah.
and so at what point do you stop telling people? And this
Yeah.
comes back to my friend Tanya that I interviewed for this show. When I started doing this show, she messaged me and she said, is this show really about, you know, UFOs and Bigfoot? And I said, yes, it is. She said, I've seen a UFO. I saw a UFO. And she came on and told me her story, and she saw the UFO way back in 2002. She told a couple people back then when it happened, and nobody believed her, and everybody made fun of her, and so she stopped telling it until 2021. She told her story, you know, this year, because now UFOs are re-entering our culture and our
Expectable to
society
believe
as
them.
potentially real, and people are starting to talk about them, and she doesn't seem so crazy anymore. But yeah, I mean, she's like, and she saw what she saw, and nobody believed her.
Yeah. I think
You either
it's
believe it or
arrogant to think that we are the only living people in eons of universes. Doesn't even make sense to me. And I feel that way somewhat about Bigfoot. I'm like, why not? We don't know everything that's out there. People, and I didn't realize it was, 1902 before they discovered the mountain gorillas. Is that the strain?
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. So, and then there seems to be, and this is just a casual observance, there's something about the 70s with UFOs and Bigfoot both. There seemed to be a burst of sightings. And I wonder, maybe it's got something to do with peace, love, and drugs. I don't know.
Or maybe just as, you know, forms of communication increased, people were able to hear these stories more.
Yeah.
These stories were shared. These stories were national news. Whereas before, it was just sort of passed down from generations, and now those things that are passed down, used to be passed down from generations, are spread across countries and what have you.
Yeah. Fast.
Yeah, and you know, in the 70s, it really started becoming a part of a pop culture phenomenon, and you know, at the same time, you kind of had the rise of the blockbuster movie, for example. So all of a sudden, people were watching things like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, like Jaws, like the $6 Million Man on television, you know, which had a Bigfoot in it at one time. Star Trek, William Shatner. All kinds of shows on the unexplained on TV, Unsolved Mysteries. It might not take that far back, but shows like Unsolved Mysteries, predecessors, you know. So it's actually really hard to separate. At what point did you know that the UFO and Bigfoot experiences take off, and the blockbuster movies and the television shows and everything? It's kind of hard to separate those two things, but I feel like they're kind of connected and hard to separate, but that doesn't take away from the validity of the sightings, though, in my mind.
Well, and then there's, what is it? Not mass hysteria, but
War of the Worlds.
It affects how other people think and what they look for, I guess.
Oh, right. Just like War of the Worlds, right? When it was first done on the radio, and next thing you know, you literally did have mass hysteria of people believing we were being attacked by an alien invasion.
Yep.
And it was real. It was real to them. As real as anything.
And as far as Bigfoot, there is so much land that human beings haven't even set foot to. And I would go back to Hyde and Terrell County. There could be Bigfoot down there, and you'd never see them.
Right.
And that's just and think about the mountain areas. How the man who blew up the abortion clinic, how long he stayed hidden. Nobody found him until he came out into a town. I mean,
that's right.
I feel like there's a creature that doesn't want to be found. They can pretty well stay hidden.
Oh, yeah. Well, even on the news right now, you know, we have a man, the laundry man. I'm not 100% sure that's how you pronounce his name. I know you've both seen about him. They were vacationing in Utah, I believe, and they were newlyweds. His wife was found dead.
No,
you know, the entire
you have gotten so many of the details wrong, but it's fine.
I might have glossed over some of the details, but the fact is, the entire world is looking for this man. No trace of him, no sign of him.
Yeah, it's wild. The other thing is, so many people, in terms of seeing Bigfoot or what have you, so many people don't leave their house, their neighborhood, their city, their comfort zone. How many people truly anymore are just out there in the woods, listening, taking it all in, looking outside themselves, looking outside their phone? I mean, I've got who knows how many friends on Facebook and Instagram, and maybe 2 or 3 of them are posting pictures out in the wilderness. I mean, there's not that many people who go and explore anymore. And they aren't looking for the right things. They're taking selfies and taking pictures of who knows what. And if you're not looking, you're going to miss it all.
And it Donna, takes so much patience, and you have to be so quiet, because I would love to be a good wildlife photographer, but I'm not patient enough. I'll sit in the backyard and think, oh, a deer will come out, and in 15 minutes I'm like, okay. Not gonna happen.
It's like my son, he wants to go catfishing, but I said, son, that is a sport of patience. I'm not sure you're ready yet for the catfishing. Bass fishing you do fine, but the catfishing, sitting there waiting for hours for something to bite, I'm not so sure. Donna, you had a great example, though, about unexplored places. I wondered, what's your thoughts on, there seems to be a lot of Bigfoot sightings in connection with known areas with subterranean geography, caves, tunnels.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely possible. You talk about unexplored. We have no idea, basically, in terms of subterranean Earth, about what's below our own feet. And there are a lot of theories, that perhaps Bigfoots use this as a kind of a highway or door. They only peek out into our world, just every so often.
Yeah, I have read those stories too, and that's surely a possibility, depending on where you are. Yeah.
And in North Carolina, yeah, and in North Carolina, they're associated with other things like the Brown Mountain Lights and glowing orbs and UFOs, and so it is interesting to me how the subterranean and the unexplored places in the mountains, they always seem to connect to the mysterious.
Well, it's dark in there.
Yeah.
I remember a vacation trip, and we went to Linville Caverns. Is that it? In North Carolina Mountain? And they get you in there, and then they turn the light off, and you can't see your hand in front of your face. And I did not appreciate that little trick.
No, I would not have either, Donna. I would have been shaken.
The darkest dark you will ever be in, right there.
Yep.
Crazy. Oh, well, Donna, it has been so much fun chatting with you and learning about you and talking about your books, and we're definitely going to be reading the next one that you put out, and maybe you can even come back on the show and chat with us about that one. I know Tim had one more question for you, or maybe a few more, but certainly one more before we head out.
No, just one more thing, Donna, and by the way, it's been so great having award-winning author Donna Campbell Smith with us tonight. Please buy her book, My Friends from the Wood, My Neighbors from the Woods. CJ, could you hold that up for everybody again?
Author and illustrator.
Yes, I love the illustration. I love the cover. It's such a fascinating read. I love the characters in the book. It was a terrific book. And I'm like some of our listeners. I can't wait for the not sequel, but the next Bigfoot book you write, even if it's not necessarily a sequel. But Donna, this is All Things Unexplained, and we touched on this just a little while ago about the rise in Bigfoot sightings and UFO sightings. And Donna, what is your take on the unexplained? Is there crossover between all these paranormal unexplained things, Bigfoots, UFOs, aliens, ghosts, etc.?
Well, I don't think of Bigfoot as paranormal. I just think he's another critter. So I guess I don't follow that train of thought. I grew up on ghost stories. Everybody told ghost stories. My mother was a great ghost storyteller, and there were two kinds that she told: the ones that were true and the ones that were made up. We never were quite sure which was which all the time.
Right.
So, but I just, my belief, and I don't have anything to base it on, but just mine being naive maybe, but I just think if Bigfoot's out there, he's just another creature like bear and deer and all the rest of them. Maybe smarter than most. He's doing pretty good at not getting caught. So, I don't know. That's the unexplained. We don't know.
Right.
True.
Well said. And perhaps if any of us, Donna, CJ, or myself, ever got stuck in some quicksand or a snake-infested swamp, who knows? Maybe Bigfoot would lend a hand to try to help us out.
Hey, I would take help wherever I can get into that situation.
Yeah,
I'm thinking that man must not have been in quicksand.
Yeah, he clearly wasn't in too much danger.
He must have known he could get out by himself.
Well, thanks so much for joining us tonight,
I admire
Donna.
his feelings and his integrity, but hey, not staying in the hole with snakes if I got help waiting for me.
All I know is if Bigfoot ever reaches a hand out to help any of us, may there please also be a world-class photographer ready to snap
or just a cell phone. Now that's the real unexplained mystery in this day and time. Although I shouldn't say that, because I've taken a whole bunch of bear pictures and none of them have been sharp, because I'm so excited I can't keep my hands steady. So that could be part of the problem.
All right. Well, thank you again so much for joining us.
For inviting me to do this. This has been fun.
It's been a joy.
It's been so fun. You've been amazing.
Friends for chiming in. It's been good to meet your friends and your daughter as well.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for those of you that are watching us live, and for those that are tuning into the podcast. We certainly appreciate your support. Until next time, go out there and find all the unexplained. Come share your stories with us soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, Donna. Good night, CJ.
Good night.